Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Love with John O'Connor. Today I'm going solo on the podcast and we're going to be talking about dealing with difficulties. Today's podcast is going to be about, for me, sharing my last 4 years and really this last month or 4 weeks between June and July and what that looks like and what I've gone through, what I'm going through, and how maybe it can help you to deal with some of your stuff. So when we talk about tough love and what it was, I was sitting with my crew today and we were talking about, the history of tough love and what I went through, getting hurt, the depression, coming out of that. And again, it's amazing what a global pandemic does because the world really didn't know what was going on other than my inner circle and, my really close friends and family. And when I had gotten hurt, I really thought I was done. And that was something for me that was my identity. And I didn't really know what that meant until the recent days and weeks and listening to a lot of people out there and their stories and realizing how I'm not alone. And so many people go through this, whether they're pro athletes or business professionals or, people that are just the average Joe. And probably what hit home the most for me was closing one of our largest locations. And obviously I'll always look back and frame it that I'm super proud that we built out this massive location and it was to the nines. And I have to say, there was nothing about it was wrong. We thought that everything was right. And then, a pandemic happens, right? You can't kind of schedule that on your calendar. So we were blessed, the landlords at the time, and even the new landlords were really great during the whole transition of closing the practice and the location. But during that time, we were shut down. And I remember hobbling in there with the kids and taking them in and letting them play around because I was just really kind of starting the whole super injured and, depressed process from being injured. And for any athletes out there, if you guys follow me on my social media, I think a lot of people get confused at what I am. What am I trying to create? Am I a fitness influencer? Am I, if you look at my other pages, I'm a healthcare provider. That is a page to let you know, never give up, don't quit, because I quit on myself during that time. I quit on my family. I quit on my wife. I quit on everything because I just didn't see any hope. And it was a super dark place to be in. And, I definitely rebuilt myself and I changed and God knows there were a lot of things that happened, for a story for another podcast, along the way. And it really changed who I was. I evolved in certain ways, and in certain ways, I think developed some things, some characteristics that old me wouldn't like. But at the same time, I think some of my newer traits, are actually better for, the back nine, if you will, now that I'm 50. As far as understanding the importance of taking care of myself and doing things that are better for me. And with that being said, that still brings me back to, dealing with difficult things. I think one thing that I, have to share is, depression's a thing that growing up during my generation, it was like you sweep it under the carpet. And for me, dealing with adversity of all the injuries, being paralyzed, my facial fracture, spine fracture, knee rebuild, stomach surgery, ACL tear, labral tear, I never really flinched at injuries. I was just like, dial in, lock in, get healthy, you got this. When the compounding effects of the practice taking a turn a downturn and spiraling, between healthcare reform and the team. And I'm sure one of the things that I resonate with a lot of leaders that are on social media is a lot of that was a reflection of me. I know a good friend of mine, DJ, was talking about burnout a few weeks ago, and I absolutely burnt out. And that was a lot. It was a lot to face. It was a lot to speak about, because one of my business coaches that I really respected and learned a lot from right before COVID always talked about that Disney experience. And when I walked into a room, I walked into a practice, I walked into an exam room, I walked onto a basketball court to train kids, it was showtime. It was be Doc. It was be John O'Connor. And then when I would leave there and get to home or get to where you should be happy, I was a void. I was empty. And looking back at it, that was the burnout. And I think so many people go through life that way, and I couldn't even imagine. So when we talk about tough love and some of the things that I'm going to try to evolve this program into is giving people the tools to avoid, redirect, and almost give them like the Google directions for, how to get out of there and how to get back on track and to be happy and live a purpose-driven life. It was funny the other day, I was, this last 4 weeks, I was kind of getting my head around the fact that I'd be sitting in front of a camera putting it out to the world that I had suffered from depression, that a lot of it was dealing with, letting go and my identity of being Doc, this trainer that loved working with my kids and loved being out there. And when I say my kids, these athletes that were all spectacular and they worked so hard and, they were amazing at their craft. And Doc was a huge part. That character I created was a huge part in that development of these people. And they were amazing humans. And I took such pride in that. And I kind of always lived my life this way, that I always thought, there's never going to be an end date and I'll do this forever. And I remember sitting, and anybody that thinks COVID knows there were unlimited number of fire pits nights and red wine or whatever during that time. And I remember sitting with a friend, and he's like, and I was injured at the time, and he's like, what are you going to do beyond this? So you see yourself getting back on the court. And I never wanted to approach that part of me injured. I wanted to walk away like a Frank Sinatra song, like I did it my way. And, I didn't get to do that. And I think in life, you see these fairy tale stories like a Derek Jeter's last at bat or last game, and he goes out like a hero. But I think for the majority of people, I don't think that's the case. And I know for me, it wasn't. Where I got to go from there definitely was, some peaks and some valleys. And I hurt a lot of people along the way. And I think the one thing that I would say, and again, anybody knows me, I'm always super upbeat and motivational. But I think when you're going through those things, I think you go into a survivalist kind of mentality and mindset. And with that being said, I don't think you know what to do unless you're trained military, the special forces or something, that you're trained to be calm in chaos. And so with that being said, I think there were a lot of mistakes and there were a lot of casualties. And I would say, it's been a blessing. Like tomorrow, I'm super excited. Met a recent friend and got to go into his restaurant, Black Swan, James Avery rather. And, awesome story, and just collabing and creating powerful message content with people that get it. They understand the importance of grind, but also balance. And also, getting yourself to where you're not burning yourself out. I'm all about working hard. That's one of the messages that I'm always putting on my Instagram stories, or, whether it's the food prep or anything like that. Because what I've noticed for me personally, if I buy it versus do it myself, I tend not to value it as much. I've been, taking, pointers from good friends like my buddy that owns Lebranos about, chefing up stuff and how to cook and food prep. And actually I've become very good at it. But the why becomes so many times, I skipped the little things and realized that the little things really make the big things happen. And, so now I'm trying to be more detail oriented, and, whether that's in communication or my everyday life, so that I can do a better job of figuring it out when I'm getting off track, and let's talk about, for you guys out there that are going through similar things, whether it's relationships, whether it's your spouse, whether it's business, I have to tell you, like, I was talking to a very good friend, and just to give you an idea of how, dialed in I've been to, make positive changes. And I hadn't spoken to him. He's a great guy. Went to chiropractic school with him. Amazing human, great practitioner. And, really took a bad turn. His entire life, he was a recreational, drug user, and got himself in some trouble in his 40s. And we almost lost him. He was a dear friend. He's, was in my wedding. We grew up, as far as chiropractors together. And he had no idea what I had gone through. And I had said to him, I go, I've always been called in my practice, like when I fractured my skull, it was like Clark Kent, because I started wearing glasses, because that was the eye that I injured when I was paralyzed. I always got the Clark Kent Superman thing, and I felt like I lost my superpowers. And to call friends that always leaned on me to carry them when they were, having hard times with their spouse or business or whatnot, I wasn't that guy anymore. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to hear their, as in my brain, I could hear my brain saying, I don't want to hear their shit. I got enough of my own. And, and the reality was that I always made time for those people. That's what made me special. And when I was talking to him, I could see, because the text message was the first time that in our adult lives that he came back like the older brother and was like, hey man, what you said resonated. I'm here for you. And, so again, this podcast isn't about, gloom and sadness. It's about, putting light to people's, view of what you see, like what Instagram is, what social media is, for me and my business and my personal life, there are a lot of changes going on. And, some good, some bad, but all happening live time. And as I see other people going through them, I can't speak for them, but I know that, where I'm at now, I feel like there's great things in my future. I feel like, it's a process. You kind of have to go through it. And, and the reality is, it's just being honest with yourself, being honest with those around you. And then the most important thing is doing the work, and I didn't really understand that when I was in it, when I was depressed, with the injury and the chronic pain and all that kind of stuff. And the work is making sure that you're present, making sure that you celebrate the small wins, making sure that if you say you're doing something, get it done, making sure you're making time for yourself, making sure you're appreciating those around you that are doing stuff to not only help themselves, but help you. And, it's just not the in the gym work. I've really become a fan of Andy Elliott over the last couple of weeks and months. And, I'm a little bit older than him. And, my boys growing up were always kind of that mentality, right? Grinders in the gym, crushing it. Our identity was our fitness, our athleticism, and still is. And recently, I was blown away by, an Instagram celebrity business professional restaurateur by the name of Michael Chernow. And when I read his book, or read his and listened to his podcast, and what he had out there, I was blown away with his history, and it made me realize that, like, hey, John, you're not alone. You're not the only one that's gone through this. It may not be an addiction or something like that, but you definitely did a number on a lot of people. So at any rate, what I would say is why I've really been dialing in on the podcast as of late with some great stories and some awesome people is to let people know that, the reality of what goes on behind the scenes is most people don't want to see it. They don't want to see that. They want to see the positive. They want to see the pretty pictures. They want to see the happy things. But the reality is that I think if you don't throw the dirt out there, you can't appreciate the rainbows, and for me, I think the last, I guess since, May and June, it was definitely into July, it was definitely a very tumultuous time. We knew that we had to get out of, the Freehold location and, being in a situation where our businesses were under duress because just the overhead was too high. And I started listening to all these business coaches and really diving deep. It didn't make sense for us to have this space. I'm looking at, so many different, business coaches and online presence talking about making, the right decision, and everything about the decisions that we had made 7 years ago have, put me in a financial, chaos right now. I'm blessed to be working with some awesome companies, and kind of really pivoted. But if I didn't, really put my head down and say, hey, listen, you've been digging out your entire life. You're not stopping now. I could see how people literally go into financial ruin. And, for me, I drew a line in the sand like, hey, let's close Freehold. Enough is enough. Let's get our shit together. Let's lock in. I'm ready to do the national coaching. I believe the message that with the podcast is incredible. I think when people hear some of the truths, and there's so many amazing stories, but some of my own personal truths, I think people will relate to it. It's not just about, how big your biceps are or how many push-ups you're doing or these workouts, but it's about channeling, you got to keep going. And if fitness is your medicine, then by all means, take your medicine. And if music or writing or dancing or whatever that is, then again, by all means, stick to it and, be as great as you can personally be at that. And that's kind of really where I'm at right now. And, one of the things that I was telling my team, from social media to my clinical team is I love putting people on challenges to show them that, like, hey, this isn't something I'm charging. This isn't a gimmick. Like, challenge yourself. Why did we have to wait to the new year to start new challenges? Why can't we start right now? Why can't we start today? And, that's been something for me that's really been super, uplifting, going through everything I've been going through this last couple, weeks and months. So, but I have to say, like, definitely excited to, not have the stress of the multiple locations and really focus on being back in the Red Bank location, which was where it all started. And, of course, the Fort Athletic Club location, has so many crazy memories, good, bad, and indifferent. I remember walking through there, with one of the owners, and I could barely move. And, one of the other owners came in from the other side, and we're walking on planks, and, I'm in, some type of slip-on shoe because I could barely bend to put my shoes on. And the guy was like, wow, man, you look terrible. And I laughed, and I was just like, and it killed me because I remember listening to a podcast with Todd Durkin, and he nailed it by saying, you don't want to hear like, how's your back? Or you don't even have a name. They don't see and say, hey, John, hey, Doc, how are you doing? It's like, how's your back? How's this? How's your knee? And to get where I'm at now, I've basically eliminated that person. And And I think that's important. I think that's an important journey we all have to make, is that, if you succumb to fear and weakness and don't find that strength, you can't do it yourself, don't be afraid to ask for help. For me, I think one of the big things was I waited too long to ask for help. And, that caused a lot of problems in my family and my marriage. And, so I think that was a big, that was a big thing that I'd look back on to say, listen, I don't know if this is something we can get past, but I will say that by being honest with it, and the people that, that were in your life for, a reason, a season, or for the rest of your life, you have to make sure that you cherish, the memories of them, cherish them if you still have them, and be thankful for whatever that looks like and what that will go to. But again, a little bit of ramble today. Again, I think this podcast is going to throw some people for a loop, but at the same time, I think it's going to hit home for a lot of people, because I think that reaching out for help, and I've had so many athletes over the years that I realize now that they're reaching out for help. And one of my favorite athletes that I worked for, and I think if I say Creative Scribble, she'll know exactly who I'm speaking about. I had really saw how I've pivoted and changed, because I did something that was just not doc. It wasn't like the upstanding, give you advice and always be there and just always be the guy in your corner that people grew accustomed to knowing. And what I realized is like, hey, you can change, you can evolve, but be a good person, and do the right thing. And whatever that is, just, be committed to that. So anyway, today's podcast is about just being honest with yourself and focusing on doing the work necessary to, be happy. Be happy with yourself, be happy with your life situation, be happy with your job, be happy with your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and work on it. Nothing comes easy. And what I would say is this, is if you are at a point where you can't do that, you got to be honest about that too. And I think so many people that I've run into over the last couple of months, I'm blown away with, that they're just not honest, but they're kind of stuck in their own way. And that's kind of never been me. I think that if anything, I'm pretty impulsive, and I've always gone to my own beat. So I think that I'm pretty excited with, how I'm evolving and what's becoming. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope you found some value in this and the honesty, and, this wasn't a feel bad for John Day or anything like that whatsoever. This was, hey, guess what? Everybody can have a shitty day, a shitty week, a shitty month, or a shitty year. How we pivot and how we learn from that, and how we most importantly evolve from that, is really what will define us. And you just have to remember, never give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up around the people around you. You have to just keep going. And, so I always would, hashtag keep moving forward or keep pushing, but it's never really resonated as much as it does now. So thank you so much. Please share this with your friends, and we look forward to seeing you guys again soon.